Sometimes someone is called to bring justice, but they're silenced before they ever reach the courtroom. 19-year-old Jamal Carter woke up that morning as New York streets began to stir with early traffic. Garbage trucks rumbled through their morning routes, and subway trains carried commuters into the city's heartbeat. In his tiny apartment kitchen, Jamal poured water into his old coffee maker and glanced at the clock. 7:15 a.m. Today wasn't just another Tuesday morning. Today, he was set to testify in court, to speak the truth. He was the lead witness in a case exposing illegal use of force within the NYPD. He had seen his former patrol partners kill an unarmed civilian, Malcolm Jefferson, and this time, Jamal was ready to speak up, but he never made it to that courtroom. At 7:45 a.m., a body was found hanging from the fire escape of the Riverside Apartments in the Bronx. The young man was wearing a gray t-shirt. In his pocket, an old phone. Next to him, a note. "I can't do this. I'm sorry." The official statement came quickly. Suicide. They said it was the pressure, that he couldn't handle the stress of testifying. The media ran with the headline, "Key witness dies by suicide before trial." But Jamal's family, his friends, and especially prosecutor Alyssa Monroe, weren't buying it. Jamal had been focused, determined. He had gathered documents, rehearsed his statement over and over. Just the night before, he texted his cousin Trey, "See you in court tomorrow. Time to end this." A week later, the autopsy report changed everything. Signs of strangulation were discovered. His neck bones weren't broken from a hanging, they were crushed from pressure, and beneath his fingernails, traces of someone else's skin. Jamal Carter had been murdered, to keep him silent. But now, in the very courtroom meant to hear his voice, the echoes of his truth were about to speak louder than ever. Prosecutor Alyssa Monroe walked to the front row of the courtroom, carrying more than a briefcase full of documents. She carried the weight of a stolen life, a black ribbon pinned to her blazer, the fatigue of a sleepless week under her eyes. Before taking her seat, she glanced toward the defense table. 3 NYPD officers, David Kent, Brian Huxley, and Raymond Ellis. All white, all in uniform, all visibly more relaxed since Jamal Carter's death. Presiding over the trial was Judge Clifford Kane, gray-haired, seasoned, and stiff as stone. His expression, cold and unimpressed, barely changed as he flipped through the files. A faint smirk curled at the edge of his lips. "Prosecutor Monroe," he said, voice low and firm, "given the death of your key witness, are you moving to dismiss this case?" Alyssa lifted her head. "No, Your Honor. This case is not about a single person. It's about a system, and our witness may be gone, but his voice remains." A quiet stir moved through the gallery. Alyssa handed a USB drive to the court officer. The screen lowered, lights dimmed, and then Jamal Carter's face appeared, recorded in his living room, sitting in a worn armchair, papers in hand. "I saw them kill Malcolm. His hands were up. He wasn't a threat. But they kept shooting. The body cams weren't rolling, because I was the one holding the camera. I saw everything. I turned it toward them. I watched it all." The courtroom froze. Judge Kane blinked, unimpressed. "A video might not be a substitute for live testimony. That's debatable." Alyssa's voice rang out. "But sometimes, a video doesn't just substitute. It screams the truth." The jury sat transfixed, eyes locked on the screen. The witness chair remained empty. But in that emptiness, there was an echo, and that echo whispered, "I didn't stay silent." Jamal Carter wasn't in the room, but his absence sat heavy in the air like a ghost in the witness chair. The courtroom was cold, tense, unmoving. The jury had done little more than write their names on notepads. Judge Douglas K. Hanley sat high above them all, eyes downcast, his silence as stern as the headlines that described him just yesterday. Prosecutor Alyssa Monroe rose slowly. Her tailored black suit was sharp, but it couldn't mask the exhaustion beneath her eyes. She placed her case files on the podium with a firm thud and looked up with quiet fire. "Your Honor, we have both written and recorded testimony from Jamal Carter, collected just days before his death, and the autopsy report contradicts the suicide claim. What we're dealing with here is not despair, it's homicide." Judge Hanley didn't even glance at the files. He simply looked up with a dismissive arch of his brow. "Ms. Monroe, considering the emotional instability evident in the witness's personal life, I'd advise caution before dragging conspiracy theories into this courtroom. We're here for facts, not feelings." Alyssa narrowed her gaze. "Then let's play the footage." The lights dimmed. The courtroom fell still. On screen, Jamal Carter appeared. Wearing his jacket, calm but resolute, he spoke to the camera from his modest living room. The officers who killed Malcolm Jefferson were Ray Dixon, Kyle Henderson, and Sean O'Connor. They deleted the footage, but I was there. I saw it all. When the video ended, the silence was absolute. Judge Hanley's only response? The witness's emotional delivery compromises objectivity. The jury is advised to treat this with discretion. Alyssa clenched her jaw. This man isn't guarding justice. He's guarding the system. But it wasn't over. The next witness was Jamal's cousin, Trey, and what he had to say wouldn't just rattle the past. It would shake the walls of that courtroom. When Trey Carter stepped up to the witness stand, his eyes remained low, just 21 years old. Yet his posture sagged beneath the weight of fear and grief he had carried for weeks. The courtroom held its breath. Prosecutor Monroe gave him a small nod of encouragement. "Trey, please tell the court about your last conversation with Jamal." Trey's hands clenched. He leaned toward the mic, voice unsteady. "He called me the night before the hearing, around 10 p.m. He was scared, but more than that, he was furious. He said, 'If they can silence someone like me, they can silence you too, or anyone. That's why I have to speak up.'" A few jurors looked up for the first time. Judge Hanley shifted in his seat and interrupted. "Let's stay away from personal interpretations. Emotional outbursts can distort the facts." Monroe stepped in without hesitation. "Your Honor, this testimony speaks directly to the victim's state of mind and fear of retaliation. That's critical context for understanding motive in his murder." Hanley sighed loudly, taking off his glasses. "Proceed, but keep it brief." Trey wiped his eyes, then tapped his phone. A voice recording began to play. Jamal's voice filled the courtroom. "If I don't make it, if they silence me, tell them. Tell everyone. People don't go quiet by accident. Someone makes them." At that moment, the defense attorneys lowered their heads. The officers on trial averted their eyes. Jamal wasn't in the courtroom. He wasn't in the world. But somehow, even in death, he kept breathing between every sentence. Prosecutor Alyssa Monroe stood before the courtroom screen, her hands steady. What she was about to play wasn't just a recording. It was the echo of a life silenced too soon. "Your Honor, the FBI's Digital Forensics Unit retrieved a lost audio file from a backup server. It was recorded the night before Jamal Carter's death but never reached its destination due to a failed email delivery. We believe this message is direct evidence." Judge Douglas Hanley looked out over the courtroom from his elevated seat, tired, disinterested. His loyalty carved into the wrinkles on his forehead, not to truth, but to order. He reached for his gavel, then paused. He removed his glasses and gave Alyssa a hard stare. "Last warning, Ms. Monroe. This court doesn't rule based on chants shouted in the street. We rule by law." Alyssa nodded slightly, her eyes sharp and unwavering. She pressed play, and the courtroom fell silent. "If you're hearing this, it means something happened. One of the officers told me, 'We'll all be better off if you stay quiet.' They think I did, but I have footage. I recorded everything. If this message is playing, I might not be alive anymore." The GPS metadata confirmed the file originated from Jamal's apartment. Several jurors closed their notebooks. A few swallowed hard. From the back of the room, Jamal's mother clutched her hands tightly. No tears fell, but anguish streamed down her face like thunder trapped behind glass. Trey looked down, shaking, and one of the accused officers didn't even dare wipe the sweat from his brow. Judge Hanley's voice had lost its strength. Forced authority now trembled behind each word. He finally struck the gavel. "Court will reconvene tomorrow morning for jury deliberations." As Alyssa walked out of the courtroom, one thought echoed in her mind. Jamal's not here today, but his voice shook the walls. And by morning, it wouldn't just be the defendants on trial. The system itself would face judgment.